If you're taking longer than 10 minutes to set up authentication in your Node Express application, you might want to rethink your strategy. In this video, I'll show you how to do it in under 10 minutes flat. Hey everyone, my name is James Q Quick and I am a developer advocate at Auth0. And I'm really excited today in this video to share with you one of our newer libraries. This is the Express OpenID Connect library. And this could be used to add authentication, add your login, your logout, routes, for example, to a Node Express application when you're using Auth0, but you could also use this with any other provider as long as they are OpenID Connect compliant. Now, we don't need to get into all those details. What you really care about is how do I actually set this thing up and get going as promised in 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I've got open here the Express OpenID Connect page, the repository on GitHub. I'll have that link in the description below. There's also a quick start that we have that will kind of walk you through the same stuff. So I'll have a link to both the repository and the quick starts in the link below. But let's go ahead and get started. I'll scroll down in the documentation here. And the first thing, as you would probably expect, is to go ahead and install this library. All right, so I'm starting here in an empty directory, and I'm going to start with an npm init-y because we're going to set all of this stuff up from scratch. So that will go ahead and initialize this as a JavaScript repository. Then we'll install Express, and then Express OpenID Connect. That's the library that we've been talking about, as well as the .env package. Now the .env package will allow us to read environment variables from a .env file. So let's go ahead and create this .env. So that's good for now. Let's come back over and scroll down, and this will actually walk you through, if we look at the quick start, especially how to do all this stuff. And we'll kind of deviate from this, but you have this as a resource that you can go and look at as well. Now, the one thing we will need to do is create an application inside of Auth0. Auth0 is going to be our authentication or authorization server. It's going to take care of all the backend stuff behind there. So you'll need to sign up for a free account, a link below to sign up. Once you have that, you can create a new application here, and we'll call this Express OpenID Connect, and then make sure that you choose the regular web application tab there. Now, fun fact, from here, if you click on the Node Express, that will take you to that quick start that we were just looking at, but we don't really need to worry about that just yet. So if we look at the quick start, what it's saying is we need to add a callback URL inside of Auth0 settings. So we'll add the callback URL here. This is localhost 3000, which is where we'll run Node, and then our callback route. And then in our allowed logout URLs, we'll just have this be the root of localhost 3000. So after you have both of those entered, go ahead and save. And I just want to touch on what these are used for. The way authentication works in this case is it's going to redirect the user over to Auth0, handle all of that authentication process, and then redirect, which is why you have these allowed URLs, which is where Auth0 will redirect the user back to. So we've got those settings inside of our Auth0 application. We have installed the necessary packages. Now we need to configure this package itself. So let's go ahead and create our base application. Let's do app.js, and we'll go ahead and grab Express. Then we will use that to create our application. And then lastly, we'll grab a port if there is one. So process.env.port or 3000 as a default. And then we'll do an app.listen at the port, and then just have a log to say listening on port, and then whatever the value of that port variable is. So just want to test this out really quickly. We should be able to run node app. Now we should be running on port 3000. Won't be able to see anything yet, but just want to make sure that this thing is working okay. The other thing that we'll do is go ahead and require our .env package and call its config function. This will allow us in this local testing to reference those environment variables. All right, that's great. So let's come back over. I'm looking back now at the repository for the documentation, and they reference a .env file. So I'm going to copy this and then go into my .env and paste this stuff in. Now the issuer URL here is going to be https:// and then the domain in Auth0. So if we look inside of our application details, this is the domain. So I'm going to copy that, paste that in there. Then we need the client ID, another property in here. We'll grab that client ID there and we'll paste this in right here. Then the base URL, in this case, we're going to be running this at local host. So we'll do HTTP : localhost 3000. And then for our secret, this is anything. So just a random string that at least is 32 characters long. So those are all of the credentials we need. Now we can actually start to use these things. And if you look inside of the documentation here, you can see it actually grabs all these things. So we can just copy this and go ahead and paste it into our application. So we're going to grab the auth property off of this package, the Express OpenID Connect. And then we're going to use that. And basically it's middleware that gets configured with these different properties. And these different properties become, in our case, environment variables. So I'm going to set multiple cursors here, a little trick in VS Code, and then type in process.env. And the top one will be the base URL, the issuer base URL. The second one will be the base URL, then the client ID, then our secret. And notice these should match up exactly, spelling-wise at least, with what we have inside of our env file. So we have our issuer base URL, we have our base URL, we have our client ID, and our secret. And so this is really all it takes in this case to set up our authentication in here. So what we can do is I'm going to start this with NodeMon. This will do a live reloading server instead of just running at once. This will auto reload. And we'll see this thing should run at port 3000. And if we go to a local host 3000/login, our login route should be taken care of for us. It will redirect us over to the Auth0 login process. And then now it's sending us to this homepage, which we don't have set up yet inside of our application. So let's go ahead and create that root route. So we'll do app.use or app.get, excuse me, and this will be our root. And this will take in request response. And what we'll do is we'll just send back from our rec.oidc or rec.openid connect. We'll grab the is authenticated, or we'll use the is authenticated function. And if the user is, we will respond back with logged in. Otherwise, we'll respond back with logged out. So this is just a quick way for us on this page to see whether or not the user is logged in. So now that we know that the user is logged in, there's two other properties that I'm going to use inside of this config. And the first one is auth required. I'm going to set this to false because otherwise this will require that every single route require authentication. We'll show you why you might not want that in a second. And then we'll set the auth0 logout to be true to make sure that we have that functionality as well. So let's come back over. We see we are still logged in. We can go to the logout route, and this should now log us out. And you see that we're logged out. And one of the things that you might have noticed is it kind of skipped the login process originally. So now that I'm fully logged out, you'll see you will see something like this where you'll get prompted to log in either with Google or email and password. And in this case, I have Twitter configured, but that's just me. So don't worry about that if you don't. But once I log in, it'll take me back. And now you see that I am logged in. And I can zoom this in for you to see that a little bit better there. Don't want to save that to LastPass. So the last thing we want to do is let's create a profile route that is requiring a user to be logged in. And then we'll show information about that user. So we'll do an app.get. And this route will be the profile route. And we'll pass it some middleware, which is requires auth. So that function there that we're going to import from our package. So we'll import that thing above. That's the middleware that we want to pass. And then our callback rec response. And then we'll do a res.send. And we're going to grab the rec.oidc.user. So these things are added to our request object from this middleware. Again, we didn't have to do any of it. And then lastly, just want to take that stuff and stringify it with a JSON.stringify. So let's save this. Let's come back to our application. We should be logged in. If we go to the profile route, you'll be able to see my information here. And if we then log out, so we log out of this, and now you see we're logged out and try to go back to their profile route. Now you see it's going to force us to go back through that login process because we wrapped or we added that middleware that requires the user to be logged in. So looking back at this as a quick recap, we just added authentication into a Node Express application in about 10 minutes. And all we did was write 25 lines of code ourselves. Most of that code is boilerplate configuring the actual package and then defining these additional routes to do things for us. So you have full control over determining which routes require authentication, what information to get from the user if you need it, and all of that sort of stuff. I do want to show you one last piece here in the repository. There is an examples page. In this examples, you can see the basic setup, which we basically did, requiring authentication for specific routes, which we did here, and route customization. If you don't like the built-in login, or if you need to override that in some way, you can create your own login function. You can get access tokens to call other APIs, refresh tokens, and then there is, specific routes based on specific claims. So you can check claims inside of an access token to make sure not only is a user logged in, but they also have the role or the permission to do a certain thing based on a given endpoint. This is, to me, mind-blowingly easy to set up authentication in Node.js Express, something that was much more complicated in the past. So I'm curious, what are you using to do authentication in your Node applications? And if you give this a shot and try it out, let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you, as always, for checking out the video. Make sure to like it if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel so you can check out the content that we come out with next. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.